So you just really want to put a drop. And my experience has been that you just put it on one side, you put the wheel back on, and you just let it spin. My name's Shawn Connelly. I live in San Francisco, California. I skate for Circle A Skateboards, and I'm co-founder of the SF Skate Club, a skateboarding program for youth here in the city. And today I'm going to show you how to clean skateboard bearings. Now, if you have skateboard bearings for a while, they start to get a little bit slower, they start to get a little bit clunky. It's just from dirt getting in them. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can clean your skateboard bearings. And it's not too hard, doesn't cost too much. It's definitely better than buying a new set of bearings over and over again. So if you kind of take care of your bearings, they'll last a lot longer and you'll be able to get a lot of use out of them. And you'll want to first off buy good skateboard bearings. The price of bearings, you'll want to pay more for a good bearing, pay less for a bad bearing. It goes that way. So you take your skateboard bearings and you want to probably find like a place where you can like get a little bit messy, because this is going to get on your hands, the grease and the dirt, all that stuff from you skateboarding in the streets. It's all in your bearings, so you have to keep that in mind when you're messing with these things. So the two ways that you can do this is you can either lubricate your bearing and make it so that you're putting something in there to smooth out the ride, or you can dry out your bearing by putting something that dries out your bearing. So there's two different ways that you can do it. Both of them work. The drier way makes for a louder bearing, and if you put the lubrication in, it sort of makes for like a quieter, kind of smoother thing for you. So you'll just have to figure out which one works. Either way, they're about the same price, so you're not gonna, it doesn't matter too much. We're talking about less than 10 bucks for both of these things. So, you know, it's not that much money. Plus you could use your lighter fluid for starting your fireplace or something, so it's pretty useful. The first one I'm going to describe is using some sort of lubricant. I think a lot of companies make this stuff. A lot of different companies have their own version of the same thing. This one I have a reflex version, and the other that's pretty good is the Speed Cream that Powell makes. That's been long running one, but I like the reflex tool, so I bought the reflex Speed Lube to go with it. So you just take it and you put a little bit on your bearings. A little goes a long way with this stuff, I've noticed, because when you put something in your skateboard bearing, eventually you're going to be spinning the bearing around. It's going to be going really fast, so it's going to shoot this stuff out. So you just really want to put a drop. And my experience has been that you just put it on one side, and since the bearing rotates, it's eventually going to make its way through the rest of the bearing and get on all the ball bearings itself. So this bearing is a good example because it's pretty terrible. It barely moves. And then you'd put this into the truck, you'd put the wheel back on, and you just let it spin. And you're going to find that when it is in there and it's spinning, it's going to send all the extra out. So, you know, just spin it out, take a paper towel and wipe down your wheel. And then maybe when you go skate that day, probably a little bit more will come out and just clean it off. It should be okay. The other way that you can clean your skateboard bearings is with the lighter fluid. And what this does is it dries the bearing out. You're going to want to do this somewhere where you have a lot of ventilation. You might even want to turn a fan on yourself, the area that you're working, because this stuff's pretty strong. And you also want to be careful because, as you know, lighter fluid is flammable, so it's definitely something that you want to be really careful with. I laid out some paper here so I can get a little bit messy and not have to worry about it too much. But all you do is you put one tiny drop into the skateboard bearing, and then you just kind of move it around, and then you're going to want to put it in this thing, mount it, and then just kind of let it spin. Let it spin around a little bit and get the access off there. What this does is it just dries your bearing out. And it pretty much just dries out the ball bearings themselves so they can roll in there individually better. One thing that you don't want to do is confuse using lighter fluid for using WD-40. I've never even really used WD-40 just because people have told me not to use it, but what I understand that it does is it eats away at stuff, and it can get sort of clogged in there, and it keeps and sticks to different things. So that is just 2 different ways that you can clean skateboard bearings. My name is Shawn Connelly and I live in San Francisco, California. I skate for Circle A Skateboards and I'm co-founder of SF Skate Club, a skateboarding program for youth. And you can find out more about that at sfskateclub.com.